Hello and welcome back. I'm Dr. Marc D. Baldwin, and today I'd like to discuss and read a little bit of Beowulf. Written in Old English and the oldest surviving piece of British literature, Beowulf is an epic poem about the battles of Beowulf, the main character. It was an oral tale, originally composed by 2 to 3 or perhaps even more storytellers called Scops, sometime in the Middle Ages, possibly as early as 700. For perhaps 300 years it was handed down orally from person to person, generation to generation, changing as it went, before 2 Christian monks wrote it down around the year 1000. Thus, we have a curious blend of a story that began in the pagan tradition and was later Christianized by monks. So look for those elements of each belief system as you read the story. Generally considered the longest and greatest surviving Anglo-Saxon poem, Beowulf is set in what is today known as Denmark and southwestern Sweden. The plot is about Beowulf, a young warrior in Getland, southwestern Sweden, who comes unexpectedly to the Danes to fight the monster Grendel, who has invaded their lands and terrorized them, brutally killing many of King Hrothgar's best warriors and weakening his kingdom. Beowulf tracks down and kills Grendel and the monster's mother. After returning to his native land, he becomes king, and years later is mortally wounded as he kills a dragon. J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and various comic book characters have been influenced by Beowulf. Beowulf is both the first English literary masterpiece and the earliest European epic written in the vernacular or native language instead of literary Latin. The story endures in one fragile manuscript that survived a fire that annihilated the library in which it was stored. It was written in a very understated fashion in places, most notably, perhaps, in the battle with the dragon, where Beowulf faces the dragon. In addition to understatement, kennings, which are hyphenated compound words that describe simple concepts, are abundant throughout the manuscript. Examples of these are sword hate, a feud, shield play, for battle, sky winger, for dragon, chain mail, for armor, sea lanes, ocean currents, and hell dam, Grendel's mother. As Beowulf is a heroic character, try to identify as you read the story some of the typical characteristics of the epic hero. Now, the poem has been described as a portrait of the ideal ruler, a mirror for princes of the age. What do you think of this view? Consider Beowulf's character traits shown in the narrative, in particular his motives and his treatment of Unferth, Hrothgar, and the others. It may seem quaint to some of us today in our secular world of radical relativity and moral ambiguity, but once upon a time, most people believed in moral absolutes and the existence of good and evil. Notice how simple this story really is when couched in those terms. So let me read some of it to you. I'd like to do this just to give you the flavor for the drama. It's in modern English, of course. It was written in Old English, but we don't have that in our book. So we'll read the modern English, and you'll probably be able to follow it a little bit better in the modern English, I should think. Anyway, I know I do. Turn to page 1634, if you don't mind. Line 88, I believe it is, we'll start on, or maybe it's 86, it looks like. Heorot is attacked. Then a powerful demon, a prowler through the dark, nursed a hard grievance. It harrowed him to hear the din of the loud banquet every day in the hall, the harp being struck and the clear song of a skilled poet telling with mastery of man's beginnings, how the Almighty had made the earth, the gleaming plain girdled with waters. In his splendor he set the sun and the moon to be earth's lamplight, lanterns for men, and filled the broad lap of the world with branches and leaves, and quickened life in every other thing that moved. So times were pleasant for the people there, until finally one, a fiend out of hell, began to work his evil in the world. Grendel was the name of this grim demon haunting the marches, marauding round the heath and the desolate fens. He had dwelt for a time in misery among the banished monsters, Cain's clan, whom the Creator had outlawed and condemned as outcasts. For the killing of Abel, the eternal Lord had exacted a price. Cain got no good from committing that murder, because the Almighty made him an anathema, and out of the curse of his exile there sprang ogres and elves and evil phantoms, and the giants too, who strove with God time and again until he gave them their reward. So, after nightfall, Grendel set out from the lofty house to see how the ring Danes were settling into after their drink. And there he came upon them, a company of the best, asleep from their feasting, insensible to pain and human sorrow. Suddenly then, the god-cursed brute was creating havoc. Greedy and grim, he grabbed 30 men from their resting places and rushed to his lair, flushed up and inflamed from the raid, blundering back with the butchered corpses. Then as dawn brightened and the day broke, Grendel's powers of destruction were plain. Their wassail was over. They wept to heaven and mourned under mourning. Their mighty prince, the storied lever, sat stricken and helpless, humiliated by the loss of his guard, bewildered and stunned, staring aghast at the demon's trail in deep distress. He was numb with grief, but got no respite. For one night later, merciless Grendel struck again with more gruesome murders. Malignant by nature, he never showed remorse. It was easy then to meet with a man shifting himself to a safer distance to bed in the bothies, for who could be blind to the evidence of his eyes, the obviousness of the hall watcher's hate? Whoever escaped kept a weather eye open and moved away. So Grendel ruled in defiance of right, one against all, until the greatest house in the world stood empty, a deserted wallstead. For 12 winters, seasons of woe, the Lord of the Shielding suffered under his load of sorrow. And so before long the news was known over the whole world. Sad lays were sung about the beset king, the vicious raids and ravages of Grendel, his long and unrelenting feud, nothing but war, how he would never parley or make peace with any Dane, nor stop his death-dealing, nor pay the death price. No counselor could ever expect fair reparation from those rabid hands. All were endangered. Young and old were hunted down by the dark death shadow, who lurked and swooped in the long nights on the misty moors. Nobody knows where those reavers from hell roam on their errands. Wow, that's quite a dramatic piece, isn't it? Well, I love reading this material, as I guess you could gather. Sorry if I get a little overly dramatic sometimes, but that's the nature of of the beast here. Next time, we'll be discussing more notes on the various texts and doing some more oral readings. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying the class so far, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks for your attention.